Ah, perfect. All right, well, great. Well, welcome. Welcome to the last meeting of Mayor Cooper's Sustainability Advisory Committee. I can't believe it. I'm Linda Bragan. I co-chair the committee with Eric Kopstein from Vanderbilt, who unfortunately was called away on business travel, but sends his best and his regrets for not being here today. But a big thank you to Joe Carroll Cohen from Eric's team at Vanderbilt, who is helping us with the logistics today. So we plan to spend the bulk of our time today discussing the city's climate action plan, including in breakout rooms. But before we dive into the substance of climate adaptation measures, we're going to tweak the order of the agenda just a little bit so we hear not only from the mayor's office, but from committee members about the committee's accomplishments. We're going to do a little retrospective. And then we'll spend the rest of the time on the climate adaptation plan. So I'm going to turn it now over to our city sustainability and resilience officer, Kendra Apkowitz, who usually provides an update on sort of recent developments related to sustainability. But today she's going to give us the bigger picture overview on Mayor Cooper's successes as his administration wraps up. And it really is truly impressive how much has gotten done and how much of that is due to Kendra and her colleagues' hard work. So over to you, Kendra.
Awesome. Thanks, Linda. And you are too kind. It's really been a huge collaborative effort with you all, your organizations, all of the Metro departments, and a variety of really key external stakeholders. So everyone really deserves credit for that. So I've put together some slides, but as Linda mentioned, we have a real packed agenda. And so I think my strategy is going to be obviously sharing these slides with you, but I'll probably cherry pick a couple of things that I want to highlight for you all as we review those key accomplishments. And of course, afterwards, feel free to follow up with me if you need more specifics on anything mentioned. As with my updates to this group in prior meetings, again, this is not intended to be exhaustive. There are a whole host of different things that our departments have done during the Cooper administration that may not be mentioned here that are really critical sustainability and resilience accomplishments. So I tried to sort of slice and dice these a couple of ways and categorize them. And the first category that I wanted to discuss is efforts to really promote leadership commitments and partnerships that emphasize sustainability and resilience. And so one thing that I wanted to quickly point out on this slide is, again, this group has been huge in its work, and Linda's going to discuss this later. But I found this group so important in terms of bringing together a variety of different disciplines to talk about the concepts of sustainability and resilience. As you all know, those responsibilities are distributed throughout Metro. And so having a group of external stakeholders that really push us as a Metro entity to think strategically and across those silos has been so important. That we have proposed legislation to actually institutionalize this committee in a slightly smaller format. But as something that would, again, be a staple within Metro government and not necessarily subject to kind of transitions and starting and stopping with different administrations. So that's been, I think, a huge accomplishment, but you'll see many others listed here on this slide. Talking a little bit about clean energy resources, the one project that I wanted to bring up in the renewable energy space is, again, our Metro-wide solar cost benefit analysis. We have finished up that analysis for Metro Nashville Public Schools, as well as our Department of General Services properties, Police Department, Fire Department, parks, and libraries. And so we are in the process of reviewing those results with those different departments. And then those departments will have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to move forward with those solar installations. And so I think that has been a wonderful effort that has really encouraged our departments to buy into the concept of renewable energy and recognize those cost savings that are associated with renewable energy installations. And so I'm really excited to transition that work to an implementation phase where, again, departments will have the opportunity to either take advantage of a procurement or a lease scenario. The other item that I wanted to highlight on this slide has to do with fleet transitions, and specifically a focus on ensuring that the Nashville community has access to electric vehicle infrastructure. And so NDOT and General Services and several other departments partnered to submit a $5.9 million grant for the charging and fueling infrastructure grant focused on community charging infrastructure. And so we're hopeful that we may end up getting some of those funds. NES has also submitted an application, so I think that bodes really well for Nashville to get some funding for level 2 and level 3 charging infrastructure. So very exciting there. We've also spent a lot of time on reducing built environment impacts. Here, what I wanted to highlight is a very recent accomplishment, and that's the announcement of our LED streetlight retrofit and smart photo cell upgrade. And so this is a project that NES and Metro have been working on now for 2 years. And it's been a great collaboration. And now that we have gotten that agreement across the finish line that was recently approved by Metro Council, NDOT and NES will put together a retrofit plan, and then over a 5-year period, retrofit 55,000 streetlights across the county. So as you all know, as sustainability experts, that comes with decreased electricity consumption, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, reduced energy costs, and then obviously improved quality of lighting. So it's a huge public safety benefit as well. And so we're really excited that we were able to get that agreement across the finish line, and look forward to collaborating with NES many years into the future. Now moving on to tree canopy and green space. I think this is an area where we've had so much momentum over the administration. Wanted to make sure I noted the very innovative solution that we developed to create a dedicated revenue stream to support tree canopy restoration and maintenance on private property. So as many of you know, historically, Metro Nashville has had a lot of control over how it develops its own properties. But this administration really took a thoughtful approach to identifying how we can have an impact on private properties as well, since we know that a lot of the development that is happening in Nashville and a lot of the tree canopy loss is happening on private properties. And so through the great work of our legislative team and Department of Water Resources, we were able to develop that creative mechanism. And then also, I think we've seen record investments in metro parks, particularly in our underserved areas, from this administration. And so looking forward to seeing those parks come to fruition as they transition from the planning and acquisition stages into the park implementation stage. We've also done a lot of work to focus on zero waste. So one of our recent exciting announcements is the offering of every other week residential curbside collection. Our Waste Services Department is also in the many months of designing a residential compost collection program, especially with a focus on making sure that that's reaching disadvantaged and underserved communities. 3 recent things that I have not spent much time discussing with this group that I did want to highlight is we introduced a resolution that directed the Department of Metro Water Services to study whether or not it makes sense to stand up Waste Services as a separate enterprise entity. And this is really important because I think most folks within Metro and many of us as residents in the city have recognized we are at a critical inflection point, not only from a landfill capacity perspective, but also from a service delivery perspective, at needing to really professionalize those services. And so Metro Water Services has done a great job of providing consistent and reliable service, and really got us out of a very difficult situation when Red River went through bankruptcy. But I think there is real desire and interest in making that a standalone department that can really take that service to a next level and be strategic about the challenges that we face as a region. We are in the midst of hopefully getting construction and demolition recycling requirements passed. We will be hosting a community meeting in Bordeaux on Thursday night to essentially clarify what this ordinance does and does not do, and how it's going to particularly affect that community and all communities in Nashville. And so we hope that following that community meeting, council members will feel comfortable moving forward with the final reading of that legislation. And then I am putting the final finishing touches on a metro government and community-wide target for food waste reduction that would be presented to Metro Council as a resolution. So stay tuned for those exciting things. There's been a huge emphasis on mobility with this administration as well. So a Metro Nashville transportation plan was developed and passed in late 2020. We also saw the city's creation of our first Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, which I think really put an emphasis on how important we see transportation infrastructure as a city. NDOT has updated and produced several critical plans, so walk and bike and Vision Zero. We're also seeing NDOT's focus on bringing sustainability into the design of all of their transportation infrastructure. So complete and green streets are a huge focus area of theirs right now. And then we've also seen a real focus on building out our transit system through transit centers and hubs and creation of crosstown routes. And so that is going to, I think, really increase accessibility, but also efficiency of transit in the coming years for residents across the city. And then finally, building resilience and livability. We've seen this administration place a real emphasis on the concept of extreme heat and urban heat. And even earlier today, I was just talking with NDOT's director, Diana Alarcon, because they're piloting an installation of cool pavement. And they've seen just in that initial installation, a 12-degree difference between the cool pavement, treated pavement, and the non-treated pavement. And so it's really exciting to see people taking action and following through on the data and information that we're putting out there. We'll talk more about this here in a moment, but I think it is so important, the work that Chris Straub has been doing with departments to develop a toolkit for building sustainability and resilience into Metro department work. And so we hope that we're able to operationalize and infuse those concepts into the work, the great work that our departments are doing. And we're trying to do that in a way that meets departments where they are on their sustainability and resilience journey. Another effort that this administration has really spearheaded is the AARP age-friendly community planning process. That's a wonderful group of external stakeholders and Metro departments who are focused on aging in place and ensuring that we are creating a city that is livable for individuals of all ages. And so we've chosen to focus on the concepts of mobility as part of that age-friendly planning effort. And so be on the lookout for some strategic planning documents and implementation planning documents from that group in the coming months. And that's what I've got.
Well,
so as I mentioned, I didn't get to touch on a lot of the things, but hopefully it's a good smattering of items that we've been able to accomplish under this administration.
And it is truly impressive. And I've said this before, it would be impressive if you had a dedicated staff of 30, and you clearly do not have that. So, I mean, it just makes the breadth of what you've been able to accomplish even more impressive. So thank you. Before we move to our main discussion of the city's climate adaptation plan, I just want to take a few minutes, moving our last agenda item up, as I said earlier, to briefly discuss what this committee has accomplished over the last several years. I want to start by just thanking the mayor for the opportunity to serve on the committee with so many accomplished and dedicated committee members. This committee's members are really the leaders in our city when it comes to advancing sustainability from all perspectives and all sectors: academic, business, nonprofits, and more. You all are helping to transform Nashville into a city that will be sustainable and prosperous for the coming decades. We've been, I think, remarkably productive, particularly given the volunteer nature of this committee. I first hope that just these committee meetings, these public meetings like this one, have provided a nice forum for highlighting and discussing sustainability work in our city, hearing from Kendra, quarterly about what's happening. But aside from the outreach and education efforts, as we know, when Mayor Cooper took office, he rejoined the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy and committed the city to developing a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal and a plan for reaching it. As Kendra said, he has done both, and hopefully this committee has contributed meaningfully to achieving those two goals. And Kendra, thank you for your kind remarks about the committee's role. We did start with some really heavy lifting, spending many, many hours in full committee and subcommittee meetings, doing research and developing climate mitigation action recommendations for the mayor. We built on work that had already been accomplished by other Nashville stakeholder groups and by other mayors. And those, many hours of discussion and research resulted in a comprehensive report that we presented to the mayor, which is posted on our website. And that actually became the city's climate mitigation plan. In addition, the subcommittee on climate adaptation early on laid a lot of the groundwork that's informing the development of the city's adaptation plan today. I do want to also note that our work obviously would not have been possible without the support of Kendra Abkowitz and the dedicated and knowledgeable Metro staff, including from General Services, especially Laurel Creech, the Water Department, NES, and several others. So big thank you to them. So those were the early years. This last year or so has been marked by substantial work conducted in work groups. And I want to ask the work groups to highlight some of their accomplishments. And I'm going to turn first to the work group on sustainability education for youth and family, and that's Dr. Robert Wingfield. Who I know is on the call.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd also like to acknowledge my co-chair, Lawrence Blank Cook, who will also be available for answering any questions that you may have. I didn't develop fancy slides in this last hour, but I have some quick review. So basically, the Family and Youth Sustainability Education Work Group had two main projects. One was a Family Sustainability Action Plan, and secondly, a Youth Sustainability Conference. Under the Family Sustainability Action Plan, we developed a Family Sustainability Action Plan to educate families across Metro as to how they could reduce their carbon footprint. We posted the Family Sustainability Action Plan and supplemental materials on Nashville.gov and generated a QR code, which has been very useful for easy access to these materials. We are in the process of developing a video with the help of Vanderbilt to facilitate families across Metro utilizing this plan. We've had a lot of success in terms of outreach. We've outreached to the village organization, to the Southeastern Region Meeting of the American Chemical Society, the Tennessee Science Teachers Association. We're thankful to the Middle Tennessee group of the Tennessee chapter of Sierra Club, with whom we co-exhibit during Earth Day celebrations. Thanks to NES for allowing us to participate as a co-presenter in their NES Home Energy Workshop. Thanks to Walk Back Nashville for us being able to exhibit during their tour to Nash. And just last month, we collaborated with the Fisk University Community Environmental Program as a co-presenter doing a Zoom workshop, which focused on educating the broader community as to how families could reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Now, what are some of the lessons that we've learned from this? One, we need to strengthen collaborations with community and metro organizations with missions similar to ours. This includes the many metro departments, includes Climate Nashville, Sierra Club, the Faith Community, Metro Nashville Public Schools, senior servicing organizations, community health advocates and providers, the Village, Urban Green Lab, Cumberland Compact, TDEC Office of Sustainable Practices, etc. It's important, I found out in interacting with these people that are running for elected offices, that we need to educate our elected and wannabe elected officials in terms of sustainability and community resilience. We must reach out to populations for whom English is a second language. We must reach out to seniors and youth and develop appropriate materials and approaches to reach those groups. We must continue to make the connection between climate change and health. I think that will really drive our message home. And we must develop collaborations with the media to get the message out. In terms of our Youth Sustainability Conference, our committee is planning a Youth Sustainability Conference. The event will target 75 to 100 Metro Nashville Public School juniors and seniors. The event will occur this fall and is co-sponsored by Deloitte and the Urban Green Lab. The conference will feature sustainability-themed speakers, hands-on activities, and groups discussions. So even though it was originally planned for the spring, we're going to work forward to continue to make that happen in the fall. So, Lynn, Lawrence, you have any other comments you'd like to make?
We are going to move on. So I'm so sorry, but we're going to move on because we aren't going to have enough time for the adaptation discussion. We tried to cram a lot in here. And, I realize I just wish we had a lot more time, honestly, because you all have accomplished so much and it's so impressive. And the products you mentioned are great. I hope people will, pull those up and rely on those because they're wonderful. So thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Todd Lawrence from the work group on the business community and sustainability.
Thank you, Linda. Can you see my screen? So I'll be brief. The business subcommittee was charged with finding ways to engage Nashville businesses, and our concept for that was to figure out ways to align local businesses to the climate action plan's tenets. And so we, thanks to an introduction by Jacqueline Motupi to a group called Globant, which is a marketing firm. They have created this website for us where any business or any workplace in Nashville can come and join what we are calling the Nashville Climate Challenge. And again, it's all about alignment with the climate action plan. If you join the challenge, you will find the extent to which you are, you report out the extent to which you are aligning around education, operating, and reporting across the 5 different sectors of the climate action plan. So we're going to pilot this first with our subcommittee members. And I think we just launched this among our pilot, our subcommittee members. And you can see here, TLC Engineering Solutions scored a 70% in terms of how aligned their plan is with the climate action plan. So much more to come on that. And thanks so much, Linda. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. Okay, and lastly, we're going to hear from Sue Ballard de Ruiz on the work group on sustainability education.
Okay, I'm gonna share screen. Can you guys see my screen? Do you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So we had the education for the general public. We divided into two groups, sort of to divide and conquer. One group worked on a photo contest. The other group worked on other points that we wanted to get across for the general public. So the photo contest took place, and let me kind of minimize that. The photo contest took place on Earth Day. We had sent this information out to schools and a lot of different places to try to use the contest to raise awareness for sustainability and best practices. We had sort of two tiers for this contest. One, we had winners chosen by our panel of people from the education subcommittee, and then the other was voting by the general public. They would submit their photos and they had to put a little caption about why this was important for the environment and the impact that it made. We had approximately 20 photos that we exhibited and had first, second, third, and honorable mention for both areas. It went pretty well. I think it would have been great if we'd had more people show up at the tent. I did have photos of some of the winners who came to look at theirs. One thing that kept coming across, a lot of them were very interested and were reading the captions and making comments on those. But several said they didn't know about the contest, and now that they knew, they were good be looking for it for next year. So perhaps we can do this again next year. So I think it went well. I think Kendra now has the photos, and hopefully if anybody wants to share the exhibit or PowerPoint, you can let me know and we can move it around. Josh Holloway was great in setting up the photo exhibit. I couldn't have done it without Jen Harmon. She did great work. And then Eric helped by Vandy printing all of the information and the photos for this. It saved me a ton of time. Then our additional accomplishments with the group that Holly headed, they developed a draft for environmental nonprofit survey to catalog who's focused on different aspects of environmental stewardship across Nashville. And they also developed language for the sustainability office to use when the general public reaches out to engage in sustainability efforts with the city, because we had people share comments that people often didn't know who to contact or what to do if they were interested in sustainability and helping out in Nashville. So.
All right, great. Gosh, we will have a forum where we can talk in more depth about everything that was accomplished, because it just is so, it's just so impressive. There's so much. And with this, I know we're running behind schedule. So Kendra, I don't know if you want to tweak in any way the agenda or the timing here, but it's over to you all for the climate adaptation plan.
Awesome, thanks. So as many of you know, I've spoken to this group about efforts to really embed the concepts of sustainability and resilience across our departments. And so the mayor's office has been fortunate enough to work with Chris Straub, who is a Fuse Corps fellow over the last 10 months to really sink her teeth into this topic and work very closely with our departments to figure out what they need to make that a reality. So I will turn it over to Chris, and she's going to, I think, provide a high-level overview of her work and what we've been talking about with departments, and then we'll transition into breakout rooms to get some feedback from you all. So Chris?
Okay, thank you, Kendra. Let me get this presentation pulled up. Hopefully you can all see it. So I'll try to make this, this didn't work. A second. There we go. That's better. As brief as possible to give us more time to discuss, but wanted to start off with a quick touch on the why. There are two main initiatives that we've been working on in the mayor's office. One is developing a climate adaptation and resilience plan, and the other one, which is a companion effort, is a climate resilience toolkit. And a number of you on the call today have been involved in the toolkit effort. They do have the same goal. The climate adaptation plan is intended to be public facing. And it's intended to set Metro's priorities related to adapting our systems to withstand the changing climate over the next 5 years as a starting point, whereas the toolkit is really intended as an internal suite of resources to provide Metro staff and leadership with information and a set of standardized procedures to help all of us achieve those priorities. So today I'm going to focus on the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Action Plan, which is a mouthful. We'll just call it the plan for today, but it is intended to build on the very comprehensive Climate Action Plan that was completed a couple of years ago that was largely focused on mitigation, though it did include some adaptation pieces. This plan is looking to build out that adaptation piece and really focus in on that and resilience. Within the Global Covenant of Mayors requirements, we do need to get this plan out within the same 3-year time frame. So it is a pretty quick effort, and that's why we are very happy that we can get your input on it today. Basically, the plan is intended to present our main climate hazards, including the future projections, talk about which ones of these we should be most concerned with in terms of the potential impacts on our systems, and essentially conduct a very high-level risk and vulnerability assessment that will help us identify the main areas of impact where we need to intervene with adaptation strategies. We are intending to release this in September to allow for incorporating some public feedback. So the main risks that this plan is looking at are in line with what FEMA considers to be our highest risks in their National Risk Index, but also what Metro itself evaluated in our multi-hazard mitigation plan. So those are severity of precipitation and flooding, both riverine and pluvial, heat and increasing temperatures, also severe winter weather, tornadoes, and severe storms. I've included here the graph that our plan is using, looking at the probability of these different climate hazards and also the potential impact that they could have. In terms of future projections, we really are looking at higher average temperatures overall and much more incidence of rainfall where we get more than 3 inches at a time. So those are the graphs shown in the bottom right there. We have chosen to conduct the risk assessment from a systems perspective, which is a methodology that's being followed by the Global Covenant of Mayors, as well as NOAA and its Climate Resilience Toolkit. We decided to divide Metro systems into 5 main pillars, and those are the ones that we're going to be working through today. We provided some definitions for the subcomponents, which make up these pillars in the handout we sent out Monday. Equity is a very important part of this that does cut across all the categories and fall into all the subcomponents in one way or another. And so another important piece of our methodology here for the risk assessment is to do impact chain analyses. And that's what really helps us to dial down into the difference between exposure and risk. We're showing an example here for heat, extreme heat trends, which are longer term stressors, but also heat waves, which are shocks. Thinking through what the experienced impacts are as a first step in the impact chain. The example shown here is an increasing need for cooling, so more use of air conditioning in homes and cars, which would affect everybody living in Nashville when the heat's higher. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what are the cascading impacts? What are the vulnerability outcomes on communities that aren't as well equipped to deal with a higher energy consumption and higher energy expenditure? And when we start to think along those lines, we have to ask the question about what are the root causes, the historical root causes, the contributing factors that have led these communities that will struggle with higher energy costs to have higher vulnerability outcomes. So some of those that we've come up with are, as we all are aware in this group, we have urban heat island effects in Nashville, like in many US cities, and the heat mapping campaign that was carried out last year showed that some parts of Nashville have 12 degrees higher heat in the summer than our leafier neighbors. So why have they ended up in that situation, and what are some of the interventions that we can take to address those contributing factors? So going through this impact chain analysis has really helped us to dial down into those differences and the communities that have a much higher risk and a greater exposure to climate change than just looking at Nashville as a whole. So we have been very fortunate to work with a group of Metro leadership and staff as part of our toolkit process. I'm not going to go into it today because we don't have time, but in a series of workshops, we've been able to do impact chains focused in on these 5 areas of our system map. And what we're going to review today is really an outcome of that collaborative effort. So what we are going to go through today, and what hopefully you had a chance to look at before this meeting, are a couple of tables. One is looking at potential impacts. I'm showing an example here for community and culture. The way that these tables is organized, we've called out the applicable hazards. Hopefully these icons are understandable. On the left here, there's a lot of overlap between the hazards and the impacts, which is why we decided to do it this way. But within the subcomponents of each category, which in the case of community and culture include the livelihoods and affordability aspect, health and well-being, and then access to goods and services. So in looking at each of the impacts, we're able to say which one of these hazards lead to these impacts and what are the particularly felt impacts from those hazards. I'm not going to go into it too much more than that, but we've done this for each of the 5 system categories. The column on the right there is considering whether there are vulnerability outcomes associated with these impacts. And overwhelmingly, yes, there are for all of them. In going through this exercise and identifying the impacts and the vulnerability outcomes, that has helped us to come up with potential adaptation strategies that address either the impact itself or the contributing factor that has led to the impact creating vulnerability outcomes. And so we do have a table with a number of different potential adaptation strategies, which we're going to go through today. And really our goal is to prioritize those that, 1, will have the biggest impact, 2, meet the greatest need. And that's what we're going to throw into a 5-year implementation roadmap that will help guide Metro's work over the next 5 years. So we have identified a couple of areas of highest risk so far in our process, but that's also something that we will be taking your feedback today to develop further. So really the meat of the plan is going to be an implementation roadmap, which will set out our priorities for this coming fiscal year and then the following fiscal years. We are targeting things that we can actually control within Metro that will most contribute to frontline and vulnerable communities and that are achievable without a lot of extra cash. That is always an important consideration. This plan is also intended, as I said before, to provide a means for public feedback. We're not going to have a lot of time to do that before we release the plan, but it is important that we do hear from stakeholders across various categories, and that's another reason that we are talking with you today. So we are going to move into breakout rooms for the next, let's say 15 minutes. And then we'll have a quick report out at the end. Yes.
Oh,
Linda?
okay. No, is that good, or should we go to 10, or what do you think, Kendra?
Let's do 12 minutes.
I think.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So a couple of guiding questions here, but really what we're interested in hearing from you, gut reactions, but also if you've had a chance to review and think through it, where should we be focusing? What do you think is most urgent and most important? And because we don't have a lot of time today, if there are other things that you think of after the meeting or that we don't have time to discuss, please email us. We'd love to hear more.
Great. I will open the breakout rooms now. If you quote unquote registered for a room, it should move you in there automatically. But if not, if it doesn't work that way, you are allowed to choose your room, and I have the names available for them. So hopefully it all works flawlessly, and it's set for 12 minutes. So here we go. You need help. Okay, CJ, which room do you want?
It doesn't matter. I thought it was the committee, but it's fine. Whatever one.
There's economy and public safety, natural environment, infrastructure, or community and culture.
I guess the infrastructure.
There you
Me
go.
too. Jennifer and infrastructure as well, please.
Jennifer, one sec.
Yeah, Andrea George to infrastructure.
You got it.
And Ian Prunty, I filled out infrastructure, but not until today, so apologies and
All
thanks.
good. There you go. Amanda and Lawrence?
I did not pre-register, but I just wanted to let you know economy and public safety only has one person in it. So I could join that one, but I'll go ahead and join that one.
I can join you there too. I would have been culture and community, but I'm happy to go where.
Thanks. And then Amanda, did it send you over?
No, I'll just click.
There you go.
Joe Carroll, I'd like to go to infrastructure.
You got it. I will send you right over. Hi there. Would you guys like to go to a different room? Where would you like to go? Community and culture, natural environment, or infrastructure?
I'll do community and culture.
Great. Let me see if it'll let me reassign you both to community and culture. There we go.
Thank you.
It worked. So Chris, did you want to facilitate the report out, or do we want to just take volunteers for folks to share notes?
Why don't we start at the top with community and culture, or far left rather. Jacqueline, you want to report out first?
Or Todd, do you want to report out? I'm happy to support. Or
yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. I really appreciate that. So we spent most of our time just reviewing the strategies, making sure that everyone was familiar with them again. And but I think what we focused mostly on was there was a comment to focus more on prevention, as wherever there were strategies that were related to prevention, that was encouraged to be a priority. That includes planting trees, for example, or updating building codes, whatever it means to prevent the problem from happening in the first place. Always helps. Number two was an encouragement to focus on percentage income payment plans, so that heat doesn't get shut off in the peak times when we need it the most. Number three, a focus on cooling centers, making sure that we're working with other nonprofits that are already working in that space, like Room in the Inn. So really focusing on establishment of those cooling centers. And then finally, a focus on equity, ensuring that cooling centers, if we have them, are accessible to especially the vulnerable populations, and making sure that we're optimizing the transportation routes, like bus routes, to get to them. Jacqueline, anything else that I missed?
no, that was a great summary. I think Sue had mentioned tree canopies and mitigation of stormwater specifically for the prevention measures,
right,
which is detailed in that list. So just want to call those out.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Todd.
Linda, I think that makes you next with environment.
Actually, Kendra was our note taker.
I joined. So guys, y'all left me alone in a room with nobody else. I was facilitating public safety and economy, and I sat for 30 minutes and nobody was interested. So we'll have to, Chris and I will noodle over the best way to make sure we're getting some critical input and subject matter expertise considered there. So I did join the Natural Resources Committee, and I took our notes. So I'm happy to quickly recap what we discussed. Overall, there seems to be interest in making sure that we have teeth in the strategies that are recommended. So to the extent where there's requirement language or something is formally, embedded in code or implemented via ordinance or other requirements, I think there was a lot of interest in focusing on those measures in particular, or converting those measures that are presented as voluntary, maybe making them a little bit stronger and mandatory. Also a note that in many circumstances, there's been lots of progress locally through organizations or partners, or even within metro departments towards many of these. And so, ensuring that we're recognizing where that progress has already occurred, and, even referencing our own resources and highlighting those, and then exploring how we can either enhance or augment or reiterate on the existing good work that's happening. Also, a lot of interest in trying to prioritize those actions that will have the most impact. So we had a great discussion about zoning rules and regulations, and updates that might be needed to construction in the floodplain, or a variety of other different natural resource interest areas. And so I think that might be an interest area of looking at, again, how natural resources intersect with land use decisions. And I noted that our planning department is building out an ecological design studio that's going to do just that. So a lot more to unpack there. Also increased interest in more urban park access, which can have a lot of benefits in other infrastructure areas or systems, but also reforestation, stormwater, flood protection, and tree canopy cover. So really focusing on that as well. And I think that hits the high points. Group, am I leaving anything critical out? Oh, yes. Coming up with opportunities to acknowledge decisions that are going to have significant risk and financial impacts, and making sure that we're making risk-informed decisions, but appropriately recognizing and quantifying both the positive and negative impacts of those decisions. And we talked through the East Bank as an example of, there might be a decision to take land out of tax revenue generation potential, but what sort of potential costs are we also avoiding by doing that?
Great. Yeah. Cost benefit analyses, triple bottom line analyses, things that we've been talking about a lot. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you all for the infrastructure category, which really has a lot of overlap with public safety and the economy in terms of business continuity. Anyway, we talked a lot about communication, both being an impact that perhaps hasn't been focused enough on in our document here, like looking at what happened after 9/11 with networks going down, the lack of integrated communications, cybersecurity. So having in particular backup generators on cell towers and the infrastructure that's important for supporting communication, that's something that should be focused on, but also communication as a resilience tool. We all recognize, I think, that communication is cross-cutting in all of these areas, but better equipping individuals to be prepared, to have adaptation strategies in place to be resilient will lessen the burden on the community as a whole and allow for a better response where it's really needed. So some of the things that could be considered is from a utility perspective would be the residential demand response program. So people who are able to cut down their usage during extreme weather events are notified ahead of time that they should be prepared to do so. And that allows perhaps for less rolling blackouts to affect everybody else. We didn't have a lot of time to go through the adaptation strategies. So I just want to say overall to everybody, I really, recognizing that you're all busy, we would really welcome your input. If you have any further thoughts or identify gaps or something occurs to you in the middle of the night that you want to share, please do.
And they could just call on your cell phone in the middle of the night when they think of things, right?
Yeah, Chris, I'll share that our breakout group talked about, whether it could be a couple of different things. Maybe we organize some additional sort of working sessions with members who have time and interest in engaging a little bit deeper. But they also would be responsive to a survey that asked for more detailed input. And so
great.
Throw that out to the rest of the group to see if there's strong interest or preference for one approach versus the other. It's a quiet group.
And we're basically out of time anyway. So hopefully people know where to find you and Chris, and we'll be following up. And I'm gonna Kendra, let you wrap it up for today. I just want to remind people that this was recorded. Share the recording widely, please, so people can learn about climate adaptation. Again, I just want to say thank you for working with this wonderful group, this committee, and with Kendra and her team. And Kendra, you want to close it out?
Yeah, I just want to echo Linda's thanks, and as a way to really celebrate the great work that we reviewed today, but also thank you all for volunteering in this capacity and going above and beyond your existing commitments to sustainability, resilience, environmental stewardship. You should have received an invitation for a celebration event that's being hosted by Vanderbilt at the Wondery on Thursday, August 17th. Starting at 4:30. So please come out. Again, no agenda. Just wanted to provide an opportunity, since this group did a lot of work during the pandemic and we've chosen to continue with that virtual format. Wanted to bring all the excellent brains in this space together just to have fun and connect with one another. And so we hope you can make it. If you didn't receive the invite, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure I get you that information.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thank you,
Have a good
everyone.
rest of your day.
Great job.
Thanks so much.